Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at the many facets of work that is happening at the Department of Children and Families, between our staff, the families we serve, and our community partners. My name is Jacqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for almost 30 years. And although I may be familiar with many of the topics we bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help us dispel the myths and misconceptions that can often be barriers to our work. Join us as we open our doors and invite you to have a seat at our table. Mindy, thank you so much for being on Doors to Hope and Healing. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
I know that your story is definitely going to resonate with many of our viewers, and it's going to inspire so many people about just the trajectory of your life. Doors to Hope and Healing is a show that is real life storytelling, talking about our families and our service providers and even our staff, about the good work that's being done, and celebrating moms like yourself who have 4 children, right, from ages 24 to 36.
Yes.
And the success of a mom and all of the different types of trauma and tragedies you've had in your life. I know that you've been involved with drug misuse and selling and gang activity and even intimate partner violence, and you were able to grow and become such a fierce advocate for others that have had a similar path that you've had. So let's start your story back when you were a teenager and you were a teenage mom. Tell us about that time in your life.
So as you know, my son is 36 years old. Mm-hmm. So I had him when I was 16. A lot of times, because I was born and raised in Stamford, Connecticut. So a lot of times, it was a lot of, I want to say peer pressure, right? Like I had a lot to do with like where we ended up. My parents moved to another side of town. I was coming from being a straight A student to now being dropped into this building now, because we lived in home suburbs. Mm-hmm. So now into this building, and there were a lot of girls there, and I wasn't looking like them. I wasn't being like them at the time, and I wanted to fit in. I wanted them to like me, So I ended up smoking my first cigarette probably at the age of 14, 15, right before I had my son. Got involved. Have a couple of brothers that were really out selling, selling drugs. And I was attracted to the clothes that they brought in. I was attracted to the sneakers that they had on. Not saying that my mother and father didn't do that for me, because I had a mother and a father in the home. And my father worked very hard to make sure that we had what we needed. Mm-hmm. But it was just something about the attraction of the fast life. Mm-hmm. Moving into that, found a boyfriend, puppy love, right? Mm-hmm. And ended up, taking off. And my mother really didn't want me hanging with boys. Mm-hmm. So I ended up running away a lot, because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I have 2 sisters that went off to the military when they were 17 and 18. Mm-hmm. I was only 7 years old when they left out the house. They never came back to actually live. They came to visit, but they never came back to actually live. So I didn't have sisters, and I was searching for that, right? And I found that with the girls that were in the building that I was living with. And so the fast cars, smoking marijuana became a gateway for me. Mm-hmm. I ended up getting pregnant. At the time I got pregnant, I was 8 months pregnant in Long Lane. My mother had me on truancy because I wasn't going to school. I was mm-hmm. going and hanging out with the guy right up the street. And I ended up and landing up in Hartford detention, Bridgeport detention, VTAM. I ran away from VTAM once they told me that they wouldn't come after me. They would just have to notify the police. So I took off. And I think that's when I got pregnant. I was on the run for a while, and I was on the run for about a month. And my father ended up catching me on the street. And when they called the police, they shipped me to Long Lane. And I sat there I was 3 months pregnant when I got there, and I sat there till I was 8 months pregnant. So a lot of people didn't even know that I was pregnant.
Wow.
And nobody knew that I really had a child, because once I came home and I had the baby, my mother really sheltered my oldest son, and it felt like he was a brother to me versus I was being a mom at the time, because she ended up being the caretaker, because I was only 16 when I had him.
So she took that mother role.
Yeah, she took the mother role. And I didn't know how to be a mother. I really didn't. But, you know, that gave me another way out, because I wasn't being responsible, right? So I was able to hit the streets again.
And your son stayed with your mom?
And my son stayed with my mother.
And then you left.
And I would, you know, hit the streets. You know, I would be out hanging out, going to clubs, going into New York. And, you know, and I wasn't even of age to even be in clubs at the time, you know. But the lifestyle, right? I became addicted to the lifestyle. I became addicted to the partying. I became addicted to the drinking, the marijuana, you know. Then I became addicted to selling, you know, in the fast money. And it just progressed until I was 25. My house had got raided when I was like 19. I had my own apartment with my kid's father, my oldest kid's father. And our house got raided. Our house even got robbed. Some guys from Brooklyn came and robbed us. And I had my son at the house at the moment, and they put a gun to my son's head and told me if I didn't give them everything, they was gonna kill him. And I literally gave him everything, and I took my son. He had to be about 3 or 4. And I took him back to my mother's house, and I was so fearful of bringing him with me because of the lifestyle that I was living, not thinking to get out the lifestyle. Now, you know, I think back, but not protecting him from the lifestyle, so placing him back with my mother.
So he stayed with your mom?
So he stayed with my mother because I was fearful of the lifestyle that I was living, and I wasn't, I was in it too deep in order to even have the thought of coming out of it. But our house got raided there. My kid's father, he was arrested and deported back to Jamaica. And my oldest son was 5 when that took place. He just came back 2 years ago. He went over to Jamaica and met his father since, reunited with his father since then. You know, but after that, it was just the gangs, right? Like, I got affiliated with the gang. A lot of the girls that were there were a little younger than me. And, you know, I seen some things taking place where I felt that maybe I could support the women, you know, stop them from being treated or mistreated by the guys in the gang, right? And I took on the role as the head queen of that gang.
So you're almost like a big sister. And
more, yeah.
You were looking for that at one stage of your life in your own home.
Yes.
You became that for these girls.
For some girls, yeah. And a lot of times now, even looking back, and even now I've talked to some of them that appreciate that I was there to kind of, because it wasn't always bad with the gang. It wasn't always bad. It was some good things that we did too, and some educational things that I did. And I wanted to make sure that they still were in school and doing what they needed to do. And that's kind of like the place where I was coming from when I was involved with that gang. But unfortunately, some things happened, and that section had diminished, gang had diminished due to some stuff that went on. But so while I was in that gang, though, I was selling, you know, and because that was a part of the lifestyle. And that's when I went to someone and asked them, what did they get out of it? And instead of them telling me what do they get out of it when I sold it to them, they passed it to me, lit it, put it to my mouth, and was like, take a slow pull. And that's how I was introduced to my first hit of crack.
Oh, so you hadn't been using, you were just selling.
I was just selling at the time.
And that was your first exposure to it yourself. Wow.
And everything went downhill after. Everything.
And at this time of your story, you had just the one son.
Yes.
Or had you had any other children?
I had my one son.
Okay. So then how much after that had you had your other 3 children?
So my son and my daughter are 11 years apart.
Okay.
So it took a minute. I was getting high, I want to say, we call it closet smoking, not letting anyone know what I was doing, trying to cover it up, trying to hide it. And then I would gravitate to the roughest, toughest, biggest drug dealer, to keep the supply going, right, and be able to use and sell and like this vicious cycle. And it came, a lot of abuse came out of that, and I ended up with this this guy that was very, very abusive. But, at that moment, low self-esteem, low self-worth. I thought that I deserved it, right? And I ended up having a daughter with him. And so that's my 26-year-old.
Okay. And at what point, we talk about you having a pivotal moment. You had been working for a pharmaceutical company. You had your child. What happened then? So
after the abusive relationship with my kid's father, which ended up being my husband, and now he's my ex-husband, I ended up meeting someone that wasn't so abusive. He was still involved in like the drug life, but he wasn't abusive. And I ended up having my other 2 children, but I was actively using. I would stop using when I found out I was pregnant, but then I would go right back to it because it was so easily accessible. And so the kids were removed because now it's up to speeding it up. That's when I had my last 3. The kids were removed from my care the first time. I ended up, getting myself together. I mean, I went into a sober living. I got me a great job, temp job, working in a pharmaceutical company as a data entry clerk at the moment in Danbury. And then they gave me a promotion and they hired me permanent, and I became their clinical data coordinator. I worked there and I stayed clean for almost close to 6 years.
Wow, that's a long time. And you were reunified back
and I
with
were
the
reunified
kids.
with the kids. The kids came back. We lived in Danbury. My job moved to Paramus, New Jersey. I was receiving some substance for housing. They were subsidizing my rent. So I decided, let's move closer to the outskirts of Connecticut. So I decided to move to back to Norwalk, Stamford. My commute would have been a little bit less. Plus I was only working there like 2 times, 3 times out the week. I work remote from home the other days. So I moved back to the scene of the crime. And that's what I want to say it is.
Yeah, so life had been good. I mean,
life
had been
was
6
good.
years, your kids were back with you, and you had stable housing, stable income,
a
career.
Yep, and and then me telling them that they never would have to experience that again. When they were like, my son was in Pampers, my daughter was in pull-ups when they were removed from my custody due to a raid. Again, when I had used, but the pharmaceutical company and working and going to church and went back to school, and I don't know. Once I went away on vacation and I got hit by a car as a pedestrian, and that's when I went out on short-term disability at the pharmaceutical company, and I used that as an excuse, kind of like to lay back at home, which I know now was not good for an idle mind to be just sitting still, and especially after I always talk about unaddressed issues will address themselves, and there were so many things that I did not address. Trauma, things like that as a child, that I should have sat down with anybody and talked about and worked through those things. They all bubbled back up. you know.
And you were back in your old community again.
And I'm back in my own community, and I wanted to go and hang out and see, you know, who's who. And I end up at a bar, a local bar, a lodge, and seeing a lot of people that I haven't seen in years. They offered me a drink. I got away the first time. The next weekend I went, I didn't get out clean. I didn't come out clean. And I figured, let me get a white Zinfandel instead of, you know, the hard stuff.
Yeah.
And I ended up back where I was before, and not even knowing that a person that I used with 6 years ago lived across the street. I didn't even know that the girl lived across the street because I never was outside around those times.
And during this time where you were on short-term disability for work, and did your mom and dad know that you had started using again?
No, they did, and I really tried to cover it up, right? Like, but they always say, like, you're the only one that doesn't know. Like, they already know, but you're the only one that don't. But my father, for my 6 years, because it was around Thanksgiving time, my father brought me a cake to the house to celebrate my 6th year. My father passed away in 2019, but I can say that I took care of him for 4 years before he passed away. So my amends is made with him.
Yeah.
But him bringing that cake, and I could not come to grips to tell him that I was not clean.
That must have been so hard for you. You just didn't want to hurt him or disappoint him. Was that a turning point for you? Do you feel like at that moment you felt ready to get clean?
It took a minute. It took a minute because I was so deep in it. You know, I was locked and loaded. That's what they call it. You know, and I was locked and loaded. The disease had me. And I just continued and thought that I was getting away by hiding it. Until one day, my kids, we had ended up moving from one side of town to the other, and I moved close to like their middle schools and elementary schools. And I walked in the house, and they were sitting around the fireplace, and they were looking at me. I was like, we need to talk. My niece, my sons, and they did a huge intervention. And I went away for 30 days, but when I came back home, I didn't do anything different. You know, and then that's when DCF was being called, and people were letting, you know, I were getting the knocks on the door with the DCF, and I would come in and I would show all the material things that I have for the kids because I've had the money, right? And they would, you know, go away and close out the case. And I was like, got away with that one. But, you know, the vicious cycle, right? And I knew the end result was going to be that, like, my house was going to get raided again. My kids were going to be taken again. But so locked and loaded and not knowing how to unravel myself was like that. That's painful.
Yeah, it sounds like a vicious cycle, really.
It's painful. So my house got raided. I ended up doing they locked me up. I got out. I was on the run because I would not comply with AIC. They had me, you know, wanting to come and do urines, and I didn't want to give them a dirty urine. And I knew that I was using. I always had this thought that I can use on Friday and Saturday, and Sunday, Monday I can clean out. So Tuesday I can give a clean urine, or Wednesday I can give one, but that never happened. So my attorney told me, you're gonna have to go do time. And I took off running. And I went to Florida. And when I got a call from my mother telling me that they took the kids from her, because I dropped the kids off at my mother's, I shut down my house, and I took off and went to Florida because I didn't want to go do the time. And I got that call telling me that my mother told me that the DCF had came in and took the kids from her. So I came back to Connecticut, and shortly after I came back, I was here about 5 hours. The police was at the hotel that I was in, bringing me down. And so I ended up serving a 2-year sentence for that.
So you spent 2 years in prison?
Well, I did 8 months because I did a sentence modification while I was in there.
And what was that, if you can explain
A sentence
that?
modification is when I write to the courts and explain to them the severeness. I understand the severeness, and if they could like cut me a break. And they did. They end up doing that. The prosecutor awarded me, and the judge awarded me a sentence modification where they gave me time served after doing 8 months. So I came back out. I was on probation.
You had said, and when I had read your story, and I quote you as saying, for a moment in time, you stopped kicking and screaming and you surrendered to DCF. And you saw DCF as a resource for you. But it was almost too late. I believe that DCF had started to plan for your children.
Oh yeah, they were planning. My kids are in foster care. My 2 youngest was in foster care. My older daughter, she was with the paternal grandmother. That relationship was strained because the paternal grandmother was so tired of the in and out, you know, and so I knew I had to do something different. I was on probation and I got violated on probation. I was unaware that I was violated until after I called my probation officer while I was in treatment and like giving her updates every week. And then the final week I was going to come home, and she told me, and I told her I was going to come see her, and she said, "I advise you not to. I violated you months ago." And that's when I said, I have to surrender. I have to surrender. I have to surrender to my recovery. I have to surrender to do the right thing so I can get my kids back. And that was the pivotal moment in my life where I had that aha. So I told my probation officer over the phone that if I go to jail this time, I'm going to go to jail clean.
And that was that turning point for you.
That was.
So tell me about your relationship with Alicia at DCF, your social worker.
Alicia, I mean, like I've had, you know, I've been clean now going on 10 years. And so like Alicia has been a part of my life.
And still is a part of your life, right?
And still is.
Yeah.
I can, you know, I just don't know how much I want to thank her for, like, I have, but like, I can remember the days that I went into, I didn't show up for visits, right? And my kids are sitting there anxiously waiting for me, and I couldn't make it there. And how they had to cry on her shoulders going back to foster care. You know, I thank her for stepping in and standing in the gap for me when I couldn't be there as a mother. You know, she was, and she didn't play because the kids first for her, you know, and if it was going to disrupt their lives or even like, you know, my son had some issues with school and things like that. And it was all a direct result of what I was going through was spilling off on him where it was affecting him in his school, you know, and I can't say much. I can't say, you know, enough about Alicia. She was there even after our cases closed, my case closed. She showed up for both of my kids' graduations. You know, I was a keynote speaker with the Connection program. They had a masquerade ball. She showed up for that. She was able to, I acknowledged her and gave her the recognition that she needed for standing up and like believing in me when I didn't even believe in myself.
And she was celebrating all your successes, you know, with the graduation and being a keynote speaker and having that voice to talk to so many people. I mean, that was such an honor bestowed upon you, and to know that she was there witnessing that. Right before you had gotten the children back to you, there was a time that you thought DCF may terminate your rights and the children may be adopted by another family. So you really pulled it together for your children.
Yes, absolutely. I was going on like 18 months clean, and the judge said, why are you guys going to terminate our parental rights? Why isn't reunification on the table? And so my kids came back in 2015. So I had about 18 months clean when they reunified me with my children.
And you've been back with your children since 2015. So that's what, 8 years, and life has been good. You went and you received a degree, right? What did you get your degree in?
Business management. I have a bachelor's in that.
And right now you're pursuing a master's level degree.
Yes, with social work.
That's amazing. You're going to be such an advocate for for moms and dads who walk the walk that you walked for so many years. And you're, living proof that with hard work and determination and the right supports and resources, that you could be a successful parent.
Absolutely.
For your children. So what role are you playing? We're getting towards the end of time, but if you can just share with our viewers, what role are you playing now as a support to other parents?
So where I work now, I work for CCAR, which is Connecticut Community Addiction Recovery Services. Long word for CCAR.
Yes.
And I'm the regional manager, but I've been with them for about 5 years. I just currently got this role about a year ago. So prior to that, I was a recovery coach in the emergency room. So just supporting the ones coming into the ED looking for like support with substance abuse, overdoses. We encounter, a lot of that. And helping them and supporting them and guiding them on their path. That's what I've been mainly doing. I just received an award in September, the Connecticut Hall of Change.
Yes.
So I received that, and that award is for ones that have been incarcerated, came home, and made an impact on their community. And,
You're making a huge impact on your community, and I'm so glad that you were acknowledged for that, because it's not easy, to have the life that you've led and being so vulnerable and sharing that story, and then seeing where you are today. You have so much to be proud of.
Thank you. There's hope, so if someone's out there struggling, I just want them to know, regardless of what the struggle is, we can change. We can change, and don't let nobody tell you that you can't. It's possible. Recovery is possible. Change is possible. We just have to be willing to surrender and do the work.
Well, I think that is a perfect ending to this segment of Doors to Hope and Healing. Thank you again for being on, and congratulations for all the hard work. And, on behalf of the Department of Children and Families, thank you for the work you're doing to change the end story for so many families in Connecticut.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Doors to Hope and Healing. If you would like more information on substance misuse or intimate partner violence, or information about the Department of Children and Families, please see the website located on this frame. Thank you.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models, from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.
Host Kurt Barwis. Today, I have a very special guest, Dr. Andrew Lynn.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Veterans Corner. My name's Chuck Wooden.
Decision for ourselves for this week, if we want to be made well.
Hi, welcome to the crack of dawn. It's Dawn Lombardi. I'm starting the painting. It's going to be the clips with some water. Love it.
He took me on the sets of Lost in Space, Batman.
Everybody has a story. What's yours? Until next time.